Not everyone was flailing away at guitars. In Liverpool, two 18-year-old students cobbled together a collection of radios, tape recorders, old oscilloscopes, and noisemakers to start an all-new electronic band they called Orchestral Maneuvers in the Dark. Here's Paul Humphreys and Andy McCluskey.
We come from very poor backgrounds and we couldn't afford synthesizers.
Yeah. We were pretty sort of liberal-minded. Anything was fair game for making songs and things. And yeah, I mean, the name of the band came from an early song which was just featured three radios interfering with themselves and recorded noises off the TV and such. And when we expanded ourselves from those early days, Paul was at electronics college and started building his own devices and things, and that's how he became actually a keyboard player by default, because he eventually started to put all these oscillators and noise-making machines onto a keyboard just so that he could get the same sound 2 days running, because that was the major problem in the early days. You couldn't write a song because you couldn't get the machine to make the same noise the next day. But so out of a sort of like a desire to get things together, he became a keyboard player and built things onto a keyboard. That's how we first began, really sketchy beginnings. In the early days, it was just the two of us on stage, and so we needed tapes to sort of like fill in all the things that we couldn't do with our hands.
I bet that'd be murder if you got off the beat or something.
Yeah, it was fun occasionally. It was fun, but
some of those are actually live tracks. You know, in the distance you can actually hear about two people clapping
and four people shouting "fuck off."
Your folks showed up, huh? They did come out and see you. Do you think that guitars have seen their day, or do you think it's just not necessary to use guitars in music anymore?
I think it was a case of the reason why we haven't used them in the previous recordings we've done was we were sort of very aggressively anti-guitars and drum kits as well. I think we saw them as being the enemy, the sort of rock and roll cliches, and so we refused to use them. But gradually we're actually sort of realizing that was a little bit of a narrow attitude to adopt. And no, guitars haven't seen their day. It's just that we found that synthesizers were, for quite a while, a lot more interesting, and they did allow people who really didn't have a great deal of technical ability to, instead of spending 4 years learning how to play a guitar, you know, in 10 minutes you could get some pretty satisfying sounds out of a synthesizer. So that was the reason we chose them. I mean, I am actually playing guitar a bit now, but it's still like two-chord stuff. But it's just, the sound is, you can't match a guitar sound on a synth, so that they certainly have a place.
You could hit a couple notes on a synthesizer and sound like you've been doing it all your life.
Yeah, that's the great thing about them, that they can make ideas sound good without you having to teach your hands, you know, to be really sort of competent. Which I think that's a great thing about synthesizers. For people with good ideas, they really liberate you from all that unnecessary work of learning how to be a musician.